Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey here for our finals week 1 recap show. Winnie, 8 teams entered the round, 6 remained. An incredible round of footy, mate. How did you see it, and how was the weekend?
I had highs and lows, mate. I experienced the emotions of supporting a team that got eliminated from the finals. I was that low on Friday night. Awful start to my finals campaign. Can't go perfect like last year. I'll get into it because there's things I'm really upset about, but there's obviously parts of the weekend I'm really happy about. We got the best game of the weekend just concluded. One of the best finals games I can remember, recent memory. What a ripper of a game where we actually won the best bet with the Doggies' first half play, and the Dogs were in control. I would say the Dogs were in control for 67 minutes of this game. How Manly came back and won, I'm still not sure. Maybe we can try and figure it out. Let us know in the comments what you took away from that game. But not only to win that mixed matchup, lost the mixed matchup, but to win the best bet. But Winnie's Kitchen got cooking again today. Talked about how we had a +9 units on the Winnie's Kitchen, same game as this season. And then just hit a $12 multi just now. Had Crichton to score, Doggies to win first half, and needed under 9 tries. And there were like 7 tries 50 minutes in, something like that. We only had 1 to play with late. The one we had up our sleeve ends up being Cooler, who puts Manly in front, and Manly hangs on, and Manly's got to survive a couple of long-range Burton field goal attempts. The 2-point shots, one of them was dead on, just didn't quite have the distance. That was bizarre. Where do you even begin, Clark? You just talk about moments, or I'll throw it back to you. Congratulations to you as well. You won Clarkey's Collect. So, we're terrible on best bets with the 1 and 2 this weekend, not helping. Same game as his +26 unit. Clarkey's Collect, nearly +14 units.
Yeah, so the units are getting up there, almost 40 units there. So, pretty good on that record there. But yeah, 1 and 2 for the best bets, Winnie. For this game here in particular, though, fantastic. This is a finals game. I remember finals week 1 last year. There was some real blowouts and it was, and to be honest, it kind of started with a few blowouts this round as well. But this contest and the Knights and Cowboys won to a lesser extent. This is what finals footy is all about. 2 sides leaving it all on the field that have proven throughout the course of the regular season they are the best. In this one, we had the will of the Bulldogs, backed up by a huge crowd, up against the experience of Manly. And they had that experience in key areas. But one of the reasons I actually did tip the Bulldogs in this one was Turbo. I thought they would need him near enough to his best, or at least a 7 out of 10. To beat Manly, and I wasn't sure he could get to that point with all the injuries he's got with his knee and both of his shoulders. I actually thought he did look a little bit hesitant at times, and when taking on the line, he didn't have that same explosivity that he'd have in some of his other games. So he did come into the contest a bit later. For the Bulldogs, a really great completion rate. I thought they defended really well as well. They slowed that ruck down for the most part for Manly, and what Manly were doing was very basic one-up hit-ups. And the Doggies were just coming out of the line and absolutely loving that. And to be fair, I think the Bulldogs have shown us this year, if they complete high, which they did, over 90%, and they get that defensive system and structure right, they can match it with any side in this competition just about. They showed us that in the regular season. So what do I think the Bulldogs did so well? I thought they were brilliant at the basics, and I thought they executed a really great, simple game plan. But I also think that's where it went wrong for them as well, because it was probably a little bit too much of a simple game plan. And in the final 10 minutes, once fatigue had kicked in a 70 minutes of just rough footy and huge plays from both sides, and that fatigue was well and truly set in, that's when their game plan slipped away. We saw the errors slip into their game from Bronson Xerri. We saw the missed tackles come out, and they just didn't take their chances. Whereas Manly, Winnie, they threw the ball around. That's what they did well. They didn't drop their heads when momentum turned against them. They always believed they were in this contest. And let's be real, they weren't at their best for a large period of this game. And in the end, it kind of did take a little bit of individual brilliance from Tolutau Kola to score that insane solo try and seal it. But that's my takeaway from here. Manly took the big moment. When the big moments come knocking in the finals, you need to be ready to take it. Manly were. The Roosters weren't when Tedesco threw a forward pass. The Knights weren't when Dane Gagai knocked on. The Sharks weren't when they gave up a try in the first minute. But when the big moment called for the Manly Sea Eagles, despite the pressure being all against them and the game not going their favour, they took their opportunities. That is my biggest takeaway, mate. Tell us, how did you see this one?
Well, as you would expect at the end of an elimination game that goes down to the wire, Dogs fan base has got to be shattered because the Bulldogs were the better team for most of the game, were in control, and it was kind of the Dogs' game to lose. And as I said, I'm still not sure really how Canterbury let that game slip, leading all the way up until inside the final 10 minutes. But you have to say on the other side of things, Manly, unbelievable win, like incredible heart, toughness. There's 3 tries by Manly, the final 3 tries by Manly, that's the difference that gets them up by 2 points. But it's also on the back of some very tough defense. Manly did have to defend a couple of errors on their line, keep the Dogs out. And what makes it almost more impressive for Manly is they didn't actually get much out of Turbo. I mean, Turbo's a warrior, don't get me wrong. If you look at the stats, you'll probably find he led the whole game in runs. It just goes to show how much he tried to be involved. And even as a decoy or even just being a threat to the defense definitely helps Manly's attack. But you felt if Manly was going to win this game, Turbo was going to have to create a moment of brilliance. But you could see he was labouring. He was really struggling. He was in pain. He was wincing. He couldn't play with full force. So the commentators speculated, should Kohler go to fullback? And I'm looking at Manly like, who's going to break this game open? Ola Kawatu was awesome, but the defense is keyed in on him. DCE can create something brilliant and did, but again, everyone's looking at DC and he needs to play off the back of stuff. Could it be Brooks? And in fact, it was that man Kohler, the most dynamic ball runner on this team, especially with a little bit of a hampered Turbo. But you go back to crucial tries, a try kind of out of nothing and against the run of play off a bomb. It was Bullymore under the sticks just before halftime. That's critical. And then Manly finally gets a couple of opportunities to attack on the back of penalties, a couple of Dogs errors. You can say that is that a little bit of a lack of discipline for Canterbury that opened the door for Manly. An unusual try, but you love to see planned scrum play. And what a beauty it was. And I mean, I was watching on Channel 9, Joey explaining the difficulty of the pass from Brooks to DCE because he throws it blind. Like, that's a rehearsed play. And absolute credit to him. They saved it for the most important moment in the season and executed it to perfection. And again, you got Turbo at the back. Maybe you don't score that try, if not for the threat of Turbo, but DCE goes in untouched. And then the final try, Manly's gone nowhere. But I don't think they even made 20 metres off a set that started on their own 30. Play the last ball inside their own half, play the fifth tackle, and an inside ball from DCE to Turbo and a backline shift. Crichton shoots out of the line so that you don't have to contend with him in defence. Ben Trbojevic smartly just puts it in the hands of Kohler, who does the rest, like a 40-metre swerving, veering run that wins the game, isn't one of the all-time finals tries, seals an all-time finals game. Of course, it doesn't seal it because you haven't won when you're up 2 points with 8 minutes to go. Even Garrick, like, the kick wasn't easy. And especially with the element of a 2-point field goal, is there anyone better who you want on your team than Burton? And the Dogs got a real opportunity. For some reason, Burton was asleep. He wasn't in position. The ball didn't go to him from at first receiver because he wasn't behind the 40. But Manly didn't charge it down either. So Burton got a second chance and couldn't quite get through the ball. It goes under the crossbar. Manly survives a couple more minutes after that. A 50-metre attempt on the siren. It's a famous win for Manly. And a few comments there. Like, I thought there was a comment about the Dogs' halves or lack thereof, maybe cost. I do think that DCE's execution late in the game, as opposed to the Doggies, had some sets on Manly's line, couldn't get results. There was a kick or two that went for a 7-tackle set. It's fine margins, but that's the difference. And Ryan saying as well, this was one of the games I did call correctly. Even though I thought the Dogs would win, I actually come out of this saying that was the right opinion. The Dogs were the better team and should have won. But I did say I liked the first half line, which was the best bet, or I'd go the 2.5 full-time line, which was available in some places. Not sure if it was on Tuesday, but those points are very valuable because you'd be stinging if you did back the Doggies head-to-head there.
You would be, and that was a great call by you for the halftime, full-time double. They usually pay a little bit of, or they pay good actually with that. So that was an awesome call there. I think the final takeaway for me, mate, is actually Kohler's try. It was like genuinely sensational. He had 2 tackle breaks in the whole game, and those 2 were in that play. And I just feel like if that was a preliminary final or a grand final, we'd be on here right now like, what just happened? Or maybe it was a little bit later in the game. But for as magnificent as it was, I haven't seen too many people in the comments yet bring it up. Like, I've seen some people, of course, but, I would expect if it was a prelim, everyone would be raving about that, man. That was an awesome special try. Let's kick it back to game one, where the Panthers defeated the Roosters 30 points to 10. I'll kick us off here with my recap, and I'll start by simply saying that first half by the Panthers is what I call the perfect half of footy, especially the start of the half. That first 20 minutes was absolutely suffocating. And to the Roosters' credit, I will give them a lot of credit for their start to the second half. They did try to get back into this contest, and we've seen a lot of sides unable to do that against the Panthers once they get their stranglehold. And that's kind of my point as well. Just because the Panthers don't start well, guaranteed to still go on and win that game, because the Panthers do build into it and build momentum and slowly suffocate you usually. But in this instance, they were just able to suffocate them in the first 20 minutes, which was really impressive. Now, I did tip Panthers, expected them to win. I can't claim I saw this sort of result coming. Otherwise, the simple question is, why not play them at the line in Clarkey's collect and juice it with some more value there? I did acknowledge it was a possibility, but I guess I was shying away just because I didn't know what to expect from the Roosters facing the adversity. And I think the biggest point for this one is, and this was your point from the preview show, the Roosters know if they want to win the grand final this year, they must win this game. They must show up. They can't afford to lose, play in week 2, go to Melbourne in a prelim, and then get revenge in Penrith in the grand final. It just seems too unlikely now. And they haven't shown an ability to get those big wins. Now they're 1 out of their last 10 against the Storm and Panthers combined. So it seems extremely unlikely based on, the history there that they can go and win from this point. Where did it go wrong for the Roosters? I'll keep it simple. It was their start. You can't allow any side to start like that in the finals. But again, as I said before, even if you do start perfectly, Penrith can still come over the top. So I don't think it's as simple as just circling that if you are the Roosters. Where did it go right for the Panthers? I thought really outside of that 10-minute period in the second half to start it, that was a small nervous period where if Tedesco's pass was not ruled forward and the Roosters do make it 3 tries in a row, that'd be a little bit nervous. But outside of that 8 to 10-minute period or whatever it was, there's pretty hard to mark the Panthers down in this game. They did it really, really comfortably and sent a clear message to the rest of the competition. The message we thought they would have sent in round 27 or round 26, and they just held their cards close to their chest and unleashed them when it counted, mate. So this was an awesome performance by them. How did you see it, though?
What do you think was Teddy's pass forward? Or it wasn't Teddy, it was Tupou to Teddy. Or was it Teddy to Tupou?
I think Teddy's one was ruled the forward pass. I didn't think it was live because I was head-to-head with you here and I had Panthers. So I was like, no. And then when it called back, I kind of said to myself, I think I got away with one there. So I'd have to say, no, I didn't think it was forward live.
All right. Let us know in the comments, guys. Give the video a like if you got on the $12 Winnie's Kitchen. Put in a lot of work every week for that. It's pretty crazy that we're up plus 26 units, even in a season where I've had a losing record. And I leaned into my favorite best bets for my Winnie's Kitchen, but that's just the variance of punting a bit for you there. And this game is the total other end of the spectrum for me. This was a kick in the guts, a kick in the teeth. So I've only had 2 best bets on a game twice all season, and they were big games, and I felt really good about them. And the only other game where I had 2 best bets was Origin 1. And as it's right here today, I tell you, I don't think I was wrong taking a 2.5 start with the New South Wales Blues, or I might have got a half try handicap in Sydney. The Blues were the better team this series, but we had a send-off 7 minutes in. And I didn't just try and double up to get 2 units. I played under 6.5 tries, like a totally different bet. But that got killed by the send-off as well. So I'm smoked 7 minutes in when I go to 2 different plays on the same game. And then we come to the finals, and not only did both of those best bets, Roosters plus 1.5 try handicap and either team 1 to 12, closed $1.70, $1.60s. But I felt great about them. And they're both almost dead 20 minutes in when it is 22-0 to the Panthers. Now, I'm going to do a lot of complaining. Some people are going to hate it. People who were on the Roosters with me will sympathise. But I don't want to take away from an awesome team like Penrith. I want to say well done to you, and the Undertaker. Best bet of the weekend. Could not have won more easily. Panthers to win, Storm to win. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, easy double up. My only critique or question I would pose of punting is, and you touched on it there, like if you're that confident, maybe should you have laid the line with Panthers? Should you have laid the line with the Storm? Like that's the way I think about it, as opposed to a double, but not complaining because that was so simple on paper and you didn't have to sweat, right? And anyone who played Penrith doesn't want to hear me make excuses for the Roosters because they lost by 20 points. It's not like the Roosters lost narrowly and I can say, oh, if this happened or that happened. Penrith hasn't been able to put it all together for the last few weeks. Cleary hasn't been there and he's their best player and controls everything they do. They get close to a strongest team they can on the park for finals week 1, though Sorensen was ruled out. And Penrith comes out and puts together the best 40 minutes they've played in 2024. Like, talk about producing your best when your best is required. So, that was unbelievably good by Penrith. The ability to be flawless. I don't know if Penrith made a first half error, so it gave Roosters almost nothing, but also the ability to make the Roosters pay for their mistakes. And it's just a perfect storm in this first 20 minutes of whirlwind. And I'm going to kind of mix in acknowledging how awesome Penrith were with everything that went wrong for the Roosters. I think we're 5 minutes into the game, and I said I like the Roosters outside backs a little more than the Panthers outside backs. And one advantage the Roosters should have is these big athletic wingers under the high ball. But no, Tupou spills an uncontested bomb. And Penrith has a full set on the Roosters line. And then Nathan Cleary gets caught with the ball on 5th tackle, and he's playing the ball, and the Roosters have survived the whole set. And Klein gives us a 6 again. You don't see a 5th tackle 6 again that often when it's pretty innocuous. There's no clear half line break and a cynical play by the defender. Pretty rough call. I knew at that moment Penrith scoring first. Sure enough, Toto scores. The next Penrith try is off the back of another Tupou drop ball. What kills me about this one is he drops it backwards, but he drops his head because he's annoyed that he dropped it. Now, that's a horrible call by the ref to say it's a knock-on, but I know they do sometimes call backwards drops a knock-on. I blame Teddy and Tupou for not saying challenge. You challenge that, have a look. The bunker can't say, oh, well, it's kind of he dropped it. It went backwards. So I blame Teddy, a guy who's played how many games in NRL. He's standing right there. That's a critical moment because you give Penrith a repeat set and Penrith scores again. The third Penrith try is a deflection off the post. A 5th tackle kick deflects off the post. And I think it ends up in the hands of Tungo, something like that. And it's another try. That's kind of fluky. But then again, the kick was by Nathan Cleary. And if you're telling me he was aiming for the post, I will probably believe you. So it's a result of being on the line. It's kind of you can't count on tries like that all the time. It's absolutely brutal when you've bet against that team. But you don't want to just dismiss it as a total fluke because Penrith's the kind of team that tends to be on the spot and take advantage. And then I think the fourth Penrith try is just a result of the Roosters' heads are still spinning. They've barely touched the ball. It's 70-30 possession in the first 20 minutes. And ultimately, Sandon Smith is isolated on a 5th tackle. And who did they roll into him? It was a big forward or an edge forward. And, that was an issue. And far be it for me to question the great Trent Robinson, but I would have preferred Manu in the halves and then bring the longer Nitawese into the centres or whatever. But where you lose a strength in Walker, he's not a good defender. You have an ability to actually make that a stronger point by bringing Manu in to defend that position and then generally be better in defence. Sandon Smith didn't have a good game in defence or attack. Other weaknesses of the Roosters, I thought you do miss Brandon Smith because as much as the Roosters kept wanting to say, oh, we've got Connor Watson, he's an origin player, he can play 9. Connor Watson's utility value at 9, but he's not an out-and-out 9. And I don't want to say Watson had a poor game, but Watson couldn't be utilised to his best, which is kind of running as a loose forward and playing a lock forward role. At 9, I felt like Watson was a little bit more pigeonholed, and you had Dr. Clay on the bench. That didn't seem to work too well. And the Roosters did kind of turn. The other issue was just the yardage battle. The Panthers' just contact intensity was so much better in the first 20. So that's the Roosters' fault. You knew they weren't going to come back from 22-0 down. And yes, some fluky moments and some tough calls in there, but you shouldn't have to wait for your bench to come on to even up the forward battle. I mean, why? I get that Lenu playing off the bench is an impact guy. Maybe he should have started after all because the Roosters were beaten to the punch, and that's a big issue. And my best bets were like either team 1 to 12 and Roosters plus 1.5 tries. So I had a mountain to climb after you're down 22-0. Sadly, the Roosters actually showed us what they were capable of and got into the game a bit more after that. I had a chance to maybe grab a try before halftime. It doesn't happen, but the Roosters do score 2 tries straight after the break. And I'm not saying the Roosters would have won, but I'm talking from the perspective of my bets, where I just need them within 12 or within a try. When you get it back to 24-10, and it is 4 tries to 2, and it is a momentum game, and the momentum is all with the Roosters, these calls are killers. This forward pass call, I mean, I can actually understand occasionally when a forward pass gets missed, because sometimes the ref's just not in line. They won't see it perfectly. They're not sure. But when they call it and you look at the replay and you really can't see that it was clearly forward, it's just brutal. That's a beautiful backline play by the Roosters that would have brought the game 4 tries to 3, 24-16. It could be very interesting. There's also another moment where the Roosters are bringing it out of their half, could barely get into Penrith territory all second half or after the 50-minute mark. And Teddy goes from dummy half, completely beats the marker, Taruva, but Taruva trips him. And he's already been charged the next day. But why is it that like the touchy, the ref, the bunker, like none of them can see that? But we all saw it live. The commentators are like, oh, I thought that was a trip. They show a quick replay. Oh, yeah, it was a trip. I don't know. It doesn't happen that often. I don't know if that should have actually been a sin bin, but let alone a penalty, if nothing more. But no, instead, the Roosters stall the momentum because Teddy gets tackled because he got tripped and then get no yardage out of that. So I'm a bit disappointed that, like, all these calls, I'm not asking for a totally wrong call my way. I'm not asking for the ref to completely help the underdogs and give us better footy games, but it is tough to come into this environment and you don't get any of these 50-50s to go your way. And so I knew what would happen is that the Roosters are teasing and potentially like making it interesting, but Penrith's only going to be one moment away from the knockout blow, and then that comes the other way. And, in the end of the day, it's a 20-point win. And I do also want to say that I'm whinging a little bit. You guys understand why, because who knows what happens if a couple of these calls are different. I don't want to make it all about refereeing, but what I have to say as well is it's a little bit easier to attack when you are down 20 points. So I have to give more credit to Penrith building a 20-point lead than the Roosters having a little bit of a comeback. And when they asked Trent Robinson about the game, as well as complaining about refereeing calls, he talked about the first 4 Panthers tries and said, a couple of them were fifth tackles. One, was a ricochet kick. A couple of them were off shifts. And I'm kind of thinking, a couple of the tries were off shifts? What, you want to win the premiership? You're playing a top 4 qualifying final. Yeah, Penrith shifted the ball. So you have to defend that. So what, you can't defend it when Penrith shifted? Like the way that he used it as if it was an excuse for the try? I mean, that's the thing. Penrith's so clinical with their execution that when they get a half chance, they can finish it. And if you can't defend it at elite level, you can't beat a team like Penrith. The Roosters, I did want to say the Roosters are 3.5-point favourites next week to Manly. The Sharks at home are also a 3.5-point favourite. They play the Cowboys. Let us know in the comments early thoughts on those guys. I had a winner last week if I shared my early thoughts on the Cows. We'll get to that too. But look, I've probably talked for ages. I've talked about why that game upset me, but I've also hopefully given credit to the victors there. Penrith looking very hard to stop, and now they get 2 weeks to wait in a prelim. It's very hard to imagine anyone can turn up and beat them.
And I certainly agree with some of your sentiments there around their official performance in this game. But I do think it's one of those games where 2 things can be true at the same time. Yes, some poor refereeing decisions were made, but I also do think the Panthers were the stronger side. But if this one was to have ended in like a, let's say, 28-30, then certainly you'd have to think some of those mistakes from Ashley Klein and the other officials would have been under the spotlight a little bit more. But I think he will escape, not escape criticism online, because people do referee bash sometimes for the sake of it. And I think when you do bring up genuine situations like yourself with actual evidence, the exact thing that happened, I think it just misses, it falls on straight ears these days because everyone blames the ref no matter what. So these times when the refs do genuinely make mistakes and you're trying to hold them to account or discuss why you disagreed with the call, it just falls on deaf ears because sometimes we get sick of it. But I do agree with your examples there for sure, mate. Let's kick it over to the next game. The Melbourne Storm defeat the Cronulla Sharks 37 points to 10 at AAMI Park. And whilst the Panthers' first half was dominant, the Storm was equally impressive in their second half, which is what I love, because both of these heavyweight contenders sent a message in different halves. And it just makes their, my predicted grand final matchup that will include them both even more, exciting. Now, they just blew the Sharks out of the water in that second half. They were simply too good. And it's not that the Sharks were bad in the first half by any measure. The Storm were bad in the first half by any measure. They did score a try a minute in, which is, very hard to do in finals. But to the Sharks' credit, I will say they did go with the Storm for the most of this half, the first half. You never really felt like, okay, Storm are starting to pull away here. You never really got that vibe. And then, of course, the Sharks did get a try right before halftime, and that definitely kept them in the contest, I thought. So where did it go right for the Melbourne Storm? I thought they executed their start very well. From that point, they then got into the arm wrestle, which you have to accept. It is a part when two top sides play in this competition, you're going to get into an arm wrestle 9 out of 10 times. You cannot avoid it. You're going to get into that tussle. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be a big moment, whether it's a set restart, knock on, penalty, whatever it might be, that will shift that momentum either way. And to be fair, once the Sharks got into that arm wrestle, I thought that they came out on top. To be down 14-10 at halftime was really good for where they were at in that first half, especially considering they conceded within the first minute. So then we go into halftime, and the Storm clearly go back to the drawing board at the break, and they make adjustments based on that arm wrestle period. Now, it might have been huge adjustments. It might have been small adjustments. I'm not a smart enough footy mind to pick it, but it's clear they made adjustments. What I think happened was in the first half, we had a Melbourne Storm side that was somewhat going up the middle and somewhat shifting left and right. And I think they realized in that arm wrestle period, we just need to take them through the middle. And we saw Harry Grant scoot more. And we saw Jerome Hughes throw a dummy and make meters. We saw Munster running it and making meters. I thought the intent shifted to really take it up the middle of the Sharks there. And once they did smell that blood in the water, they didn't stop in that second half there. So where did it go wrong for the Sharks? Well, I just think they didn't adjust their game plan at halftime. Like, they were in the contest, but they were always a little bit behind the Storm in the first half. Not in a huge way, but a little bit behind. And I think because they scored that last try, which brought the scoreline to what it was, they felt they were in it with that same game plan. I felt they needed to take a little bit more risk, or at least try something different in the second half. Because the over 80 minutes, I just think if you play that game plan that the Sharks did of simple footy, you're probably not going to come over the Melbourne Storm. You need to take some risk and be a little bit better. So therefore, I didn't think the Sharkies adapted to the contest. And sticking to the game plan is one thing. It's difficult to do over 80 minutes. But against top competition, you need to show some versatility, you need to show adjustments, and you need to adapt on the fly. And that was the difference between these two sides for me. Melbourne adapted really well. Sharks weren't able to adapt and ultimately suffer their 7th finals loss in a row, mate. Just a little bit too one-dimensional for me. Did you see it in a similar way, though?
Yeah, second half, we didn't get a game. It promised a lot after the first half and the way the first half ended. I mean, the crazy beginning and end to the first half. In the sunshine at AAMI Park, Cronulla's got a monumental task ahead of them, as we know, and then drops the opening kickoff. And drop it in the end goal. I think then they had to take a line dropout. So very first set of the game is Melbourne on Cronulla's line, and kind of a strange try as well. Munster goes into dummy half, throws a massive dummy, fools Turby Rudolph, gets a one-on-one. Someone like McInnes tries to tackle Munster low, he just falls over into the in goal, and it's 6-0 Storm. That's not the start you want. We have to talk about when it is, the Sharkies answer, and Nico misses the conversion. All right, it was out wide at 6-4. Melbourne's up again, 12-4. And then the Sharkies are struggling to really get into Melbourne's half. Sharkies get a penalty, and Nico with an all-time shank. Like, you got to be near perfect to beat Melbourne, and Nico can't find touch. And suddenly Sharks are under the pump again. So you said you felt the game was back and forth or close until the second half, but I was fearing that it was going to get away from Cronulla even in the first half. And that those mistakes are unforgivable. And given that, like, Nico, I'm sorry, he hasn't won any finals games with Cronulla. Yes, he might have won a couple finals games with the Storm when he was there, but it was like off the bench. And when he's played Origin, they've never won. I know there's been extenuating circumstances. Then the team won 4 games in a row He wasn't there for those games. Cronulla this year comes back in. They blow a lead to New Zealand. Yes, at least Cronulla won last week. But basically, there's so many question marks over Nico, and you feel like when the game doesn't go his way, he gets inside his own head. So I was very worried. But Cronulla gets the last roll of the dice, the last crack of the first half, puts on a nice little backline play where Nico links with Braden Trindle, who drops a beautiful inside line to Nikora, who was one of the Sharks' best and is one of the Sharks' very best players. And it's 14-10, and Cronulla's absolutely skipping and giddy to be in at halftime, only down 14-10, and it's 2 tries each. And we always talk about these critical tries right before the break. So you felt like that could really fuel Cronulla. And Cronulla, the other thing about Melbourne, similar to Panthers, no one's going to give Melbourne credit for that first half, but I don't think Melbourne had an incomplete set in the whole first half. I believe Melbourne was something like 22 from 22 in the first half. But early second half, Jack Howarth drops the ball, and you see Bellamy blows up. In fact, I reckon that the Storm dropped it like 3 times in the whole game. And every time they dropped it, they always show Bellamy, and he just loses it, which is like, be reasonable. Your team's completing at like 94%. Like, calm down. But it really shows the standard he expects. Like, he does not tolerate it. He does not accept a mistake. So anyway, Howarth drops the ball. Cronulla's on the attack, and I'm thinking Cronulla could find a try here, get their nose in front, 16-14. This could get really interesting. But no, the Melbourne repelled Cronulla. The rest of the game, the majority of it was played in Cronulla's half. It was just pressure after pressure, never ending. Harry Grant has a hat trick. Melbourne is bombing the Sharks into submission, and if they're not catching it and getting smashed, Melbourne's catching the contest and scored a couple of times off that. And Melbourne's, as I say, pretty much perfect with very minimal errors. The game gets away from Cronulla. To be fair, 2 or 3 of the Melbourne tries are in the final, like 15 minutes. So it makes it look like a total blowout where for the first, let's say, 55, 60 minutes, Cronulla's fought as hard as they could to stay in it, but then the class has prevailed. And similar to Penrith, Melbourne look unbeatable. You said you predict, that's your predicted grand final. Mate, that's everybody's predicted grand final. I was hoping we might get a surprise because originally I was hoping that Roosters come into the finals not injured, because then you really don't know who's going to win in that first round match. You're going to get a beauty of a prelim when there's 3 contenders. There's going to be 2 on one side of the draw. So, I mean, selfishly, I'm kind of thinking if Melbourne gets upset yesterday, it's going to throw Melbourne and Penrith on a collision course. Then it means the other prelim will be really interesting. Like, I'm not really looking forward to a couple of prelims with rested Penrith and Melbourne, and they're both going to be like 12.5, 14-point favourites. Not to say that it's a foregone conclusion, but I much prefer to see even matches, which is why I shared that post, speculating like, realistically, what's the point of a final series? Maybe it should just be Penrith, Melbourne, best of 3 start next week, because imagine it, obviously it's the fantasy world, but imagine how epic a series like that would be. It does kind of feel like there were 6 teams playing one sport, and then there's 2 playing another, which is not dissimilar to last year where the 2 teams was Penrith and Brisbane, that were just at a different level. And if people recall, they both dominated week 1 of the finals and again in week 3 of the finals. It looks like the same thing's going to happen this season.
It really does. And for me, although Clarkey's collect this week only mattered for the first 2 games, I actually found the next 2, which were the elimination ones between Cows, Knights and Dogs, Manly, much more entertaining just by nature of the tighter contest. And it does show that, some teams, when they get into the finals, are kind of just making up the numbers. And that was certainly everyone's sentiments around the Knights this year. And the Cowboys did defeat them 28 points to 16. And you guys know I did tip the Knights at plus 8.5. And I thought it was looking like a great tip. I said in the comments on our previous show, do you think I'm crazy? I know it's a bit bold. No one backed me. Not even my boy Colt. I could tip the Tigers for the premiership from here. And if there was a market, I know Colt would be on it with me. Even he wasn't with me on this one. And I thought, I'm going to get this here. Knights have fought so hard and they deserve to cover the line, if not win. Leo Thompson forgets he's in the NRL. He thinks he's in the WWE. Comes out of the line, clotheslines Kyle Felt for no reason at all, and throws the game away. It wasn't over.
Could have been a send-off, couldn't it?
Oh, mate, it was just reckless. It was silly. I don't know what he was actually intending to do. He'd just been dominated by Jason Taumalolo prior to that with a huge shot, so maybe he was trying to get some respect back, but he blew it. He blew it big time, and he took his side out of the contest. And there's no guarantee they win from there, being, I think, 6 down they were at the time. But certainly they weren't out of it. I think
it's not the win, but it blew your cover. It blew the cover, didn't it? Because it gave Cowboys the chance to score on the bell.
It did, and that was as soon as Dearden scored that try, mate. I just went, oh no. But onto the game itself here. I actually thought until that Leo Thompson, like there's 2 games here. There's the last 3 minutes, and there's you know how we have like ADBC for the calendars. We've got PL pre-Leo Thompson in this one. So we're going to talk PL to start. The game itself, I thought the Knights matched it with the Cowboys at all stages, really until, you know, Leo Thompson does what he does. And that actually leans to a huge positive for the Cowboys here, because when you look at their regular season snapshot, for the most part, they've either blown sides out of the water and really gone on with it, but there's been so many arm wrestles where they haven't come out on top. You know, they've lost arm wrestles this year to sides like the Titans, Dolphins, Broncos, sides that weren't nowhere near the finals realistically. And, you know, I went through and had a look. I had 10 games roughly this year where it was tight until that 70th minute mark, and they only came out on top 4 times. So a less than 50% win rate when the pressure was applied. And those 4 wins when he were against lower competition. I referenced 3 for you there. Can't remember the 4th off the top of my head. So the fact they've done that here against the Knights, who aren't, I wouldn't say they're an elite side, but we have to acknowledge them as a top side, certainly because they did make the finals. I think that's really, really good for the Cowboys' hopes moving forward in this final series. It's something they haven't really shown us in their game throughout the regular season. The specific moment I want to talk about, or the turning point of the game, I suspect everyone can guess it. It's the Dan Gagai drop ball. Like, he catches that and maybe scores, or if Ponga passes on the inside to Tyson Gamble, they take a lead there with 10 or so. So that's a huge missed chance there, and it's really costly. I think Tolu Kola showed us in the last game the importance of taking your chances, and at this time we couldn't have known that would occur, but that is the exclamation point afterwards, unfortunately. So where did it go wrong for the Knights? For me, it was their spine. And this is the same criticism I've had of them for a lot of this year. And although I did say they'd miss finals, and I got that wrong, I wear that one on the chin. I've said that there is an over-reliance on Ponga in the halves. They're chopping and changing them, but they're just not offering anything. Now, they didn't particularly run the ball well. Between Crossland and Cogger, they had 1 tackle break between them. And they didn't shift the ball effectively either, because everyone was so fatigued in the Knights from their awesome defensive efforts. So it really was the Kalen Ponga show to try to create everything here. And when I say that they weren't really taking the line on or shifting it, they were kind of just catching and passing. They weren't even taking it to the line to engage someone in the defensive line and give Ponga some space. Ponga was creating for himself. And that over-reliance, it was enough to just scrape him into the finals. Just a reminder, only team to get there without a positive win-loss record, and only team to get there with a negative for and against record, but it ends up being their Achilles heel. And, you know, let's be real. The Cowboys were not able to shut him down completely, but enough that he couldn't carry the Knights on his back to victory here. Where did it go right for the Cowboys? Momentum. I thought that side was really rolling up the field well. They were getting effective play the balls where the Knights markers weren't square, or they weren't even off the deck yet. And that just allowed someone like Reece Robson to go. It gave Drinkwater time and space. And I think that's why Tom Dearden's final try was really the cherry on top. What allowed him to put the final nail in the coffin? He had too much time and space because no markers were there for the Knights. So he got the ball, ran himself, and took me out of this contest with my tip for Knights at the line, mate. So a bit disappointed with the finish from a betting perspective. But, man, 77 minutes of this game was an awesome contest. And I bet people didn't expect the Knights to compete as well as they did for the most part of this game, mate. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, man. I was picturing Cronulla Knights Week 2 finals game. Like, I thought the Knights were going to win this for a serious period of this match. And even when Thompson gets himself sinned in with 3 minutes to go, you're acting like instantly your ticket was confetti. You're still most likely going to win. The Cowboys are up 6 and just want to kill time. Even that final set, as we saw what Manly was doing today, you don't even risk a kick on the last tackle. You're just going to run it wide and you're going to take the tackle. So the Knights knew that because there was a minute to go and it was a 6-point game, all the Cowboys are going to do is run it. It's just very unfortunate that Dearden, big dummy out wide and goes himself. Like 9 times out of 10, the team with the ball is barely even trying to score because they just don't want to risk an error or turnover, right? So to cop a try like that, I mean, anyone that had the plus points with the Cowboys gets burned there. I was thinking, well, at least on Tuesday the line was 7.5, and I leaned Cows. But had I played that, I would have lost. I was still annoyed because, as I said on the Sunday night a week ago, the first bet that stood out to me was Cowboys minus 5.5. The Cowboys didn't deserve to win the game, let alone cover. I'm sorry to be harsh. I want to give credit to every team that wins a finals game. I don't want to take away from anyone who's feeling awesome. But I just think the Knights just did enough to deserve to win that game. And I'll circle back and explain what I mean. But certainly the Cowboys don't deserve to cover. The try that puts them in front is a deflected, dropped kick that hits Cotter's shins, and then he runs in and grounds it. And then you get the try on the siren. And so it hurts anyone with the plus points with the Knights. But what about Benny Howard, who I bring on the show? He was 19-1. He ends up with the same best bet as me in round 27. We both lose on Manly against the Cronulla side that has nothing to play for. The very next week, Manly wins, Cronulla lose by 30 points, whatever. Anyway, Benny Howard, sharing tips in the TryPod group, is 19-2 for the regular season. Of course, I've got to bring him onto the show, share his insights with our followers, give him a spotlight. But I've put the mock on him, have I ever? I mean, he says he likes we liked Knights first half line with 4.5. He was tossing up a Cowboys first half team total under, but he goes with Cowboys under 26.5 points. And so that try and those late 12 points by the Cowboys sinks Benny with the total going over by 1.5 points. You have no right to lose that. It is 16-all with like 10 or 12 minutes to go. You said that the Knights halves let them down. I want to pinpoint 2 moments that were really poor by Newcastle. Firstly, Newcastle is in front. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place, but first half, how awesome was Callum Ponga? He has an early moment where he skins Vilea, leaves him for dead, but Felt knocks the pass down. But the step that he put on Vilea, it just made me laugh out loud. It was just ridiculous. Knights probably deserved to score there, but savvy play by the wily vet. Felt not only knocked the pass down, knocked it down backwards and turned over possession. But you could tell Ponga was in a mood. And I marvel even more at guys like Ponga when he does the things he does, because everybody on the other team is trying to stop Ponga. Nobody is caught by surprise when Ponga does something awesome, expecting it all game. But he still does it. You know what he's going to do? He can do it anyway. That's the sign of a true supernova out there. So Ponga has that moment. Then the Knights have another opportunity where there's an overlap and look like they're going to score, and Felt slings an arm out, takes the intercept 90 metres back the other way. So the only try the Cowboys have in the first 40 is off an intercept, talking about the fact that if you're a Newcastle fan, you deservedly are going to be hurting today. Nevertheless, the Knights are up 12-4 at the break, and the final minute of the half, the Knights are on the attack and an early kick in behind. If it bounces differently, Frizzell scores, and it's 18-4. And you've nearly got 1 foot into week 2, but Drinkwater just able to get that bounce, save the try. But low footy IQ. There was only 10 seconds of play after the dropout. What are you going to do? Well, the Knights catch the ball. Phoenix Crossland, last time I checked, is wearing 7 on his back. You're 40 out. There's no one in front of you. Should we maybe have a shot at a 2-point field goal? No, passes to a prop who just runs it up and takes the tackle. And that's the end of the half. This game ended up being 16-all in the second half. A point or two there could be different because it's a different game if you're up 1 or 2 as opposed to level scores. And that does also mean I have to mention that Ponga, had a conversion that hit the post and missed when it was 16-all. If you get in front there, it's a different mentality that you've scored and you may not need to score again to win the game. I don't want to blame Callum Ponga because he was Herculean in this match. I mentioned a missed conversion because it wasn't like a sideline conversion. And Val did miss 1 kick too. I kind of put the mock on Val, 25 in a row. His first kick hits the post. But it was on the sideline, he hits the post, and he kicks the next 4 from 4, unfortunately for Benny Howard there. But Newcastle's in control, up 12-4. However, the Cowboys get back in the game on the back of Knights' errors. Hetherington drops the ball, North Queensland scores. And then getting back to halves play, Cogger comes up with a bomb that just floats 10 metres too far and is marked in the in goal. 7 tackle set, North Queensland. North Queensland scores and hits the front. However, credit to Newcastle for not dropping their heads, fighting back. Beautiful try where I think Ponga was more of the decoy. And I guess I criticised Crossland before, but I think it was Crossland with a beautiful delayed pass to KPP, who went through and then he was held up, but he got an offload away. And of course, the Knights missed Bradman Best a little bit, but it was Lucas at centre. He was too scared to pass and have Felt pick it off again. So he just ran himself and luckily broke a couple of tackles, scores the try that gives Newcastle the chance to go in front. But as I say, Ponga misses the kick. However, then I circle back to this moment with 12 minutes to go. Ponga makes another clean line break. And you called it the Gagai drop. But to me, it's not a good pass. I know that there was a defender close to Gagai, so Ponga is deliberately putting it out in front of Gagai, but it's probably out in front of him and low. And Gamble was an option on the inside. And I hate to criticise the guy that Newcastle's not in the game if not for Ponga, and he puts so much on himself, and you're expecting him to be perfect. You know, when you've got to make that many plays, maybe not every single one of them is going to be an A+. It's just, if there's any player you want bursting into the clear, because of Ponga's combination of agility, speed, but also his ability to pass, is basically, you know, that combination is as good as anyone, because Ponga never looks like he's sprinting flat out. He's just gliding around the field. There's no one you'd probably rather have in that situation. It's just so tough because the Knights are scoring if that pass finds hands inside or outside and you drop it, and then you end up conceding from a deflected bomb, which was actually sent up no try. But it's a close one. I saw some people saying they thought Cotter knocked on. It looked to me like it's off the knee, but it's just cruel. It goes the other way. So North Queensland gets out of jail. North Queensland missed about 40 tackles first half. So that's why I am going to be a little bit critical of the Cowboys. I know if you didn't catch the game, you just see the highlights, you'll be like, well, come on, they won by 12 at home. This result was anything but. I mean, once again, I should have been on the Cowboys. I picked it out on Sunday. It moved by Tuesday. I still liked it. It doesn't mean it's going to win just because I liked something and it moved. I've been wrong plenty of times this year. I was hoping to be wrong, and I was hoping you were right with the Knights line. Sometimes when you lay the points with a team, they win comfortably, and you can say I was right. Sometimes you lay the points with a team, they don't dominate, but you just get a couple of late tries that blows the score out. I swear that has not happened for my bets all year. Like a team that is losing by 8 at halftime, that is level scores with 10 to go, that gets a couple of tries and covers a big line. But when I wasn't on the bet, you better believe the Cowboys got through. So it's kind of like North Queensland's whole season. They didn't impress us at all for 80% of it, but then they just woke up in time and they're still here and have every chance next week, albeit they've got to go down to Sydney.
I agree. It's a bit strange in the fact that, like, I've criticised the Seagulls and said they weren't at their best for the large part of this game. And I criticised the Cowboys. And, basically every team we criticise today is playing again next week, right? But that's just the way finals goes. You can't sit there and, Adam O'Brien post-game said, we've turned a corner in our DNA. Fans don't want to hear it. It's do or die, unfortunately. And if you do win, all credit to you. And it does make it a bit weird when you criticise them. I agree with that for sure, Winnie.
Like good season by the Knights, all in all. O'Brien's got a point that they suffered a fair bit of adversity. They never gave up. Pretty gritty team. But O'Brien was asked the question, you've made the finals nearly every year, but do you feel you're building towards a premiership? You could just see in his eyes that no, he doesn't. Like, there is no real clear path to a premiership for this Newcastle side. There's nobody if they've got cap issues, if anything, they can't keep all these players that made the finals. I'm not certain how they get better. Ponga's has played like last year and this year as good as he can play. Oh, I know, like he won the Dally M last year. He did miss substantial time in both seasons. So I suppose if you got a full season out of Ponga, but that might help you win a few more regular season games. But how much better can you raise the ceiling of this Knights side unless you can, I don't know, unearth more talent out there? I do have to criticize another team that's still in the competition, and that's the refs. Because, again, I kind of already complained about Friday night and Klein, right? So I've already said my piece that. And I thought maybe it's just me being salty, but it did seem like a lot of people didn't think it was fair refereeing, and it seemed to favour the home side, right? And I just feel like, why do these refs hate close games? Do they hate close games because they might end up getting blamed if it goes down to the wire? Like, is there a subconscious that if you help the favoured team win and someone's up 20, you can't make a massive blunder in a blowout game? I hate it that the favourite teams are getting all the calls. And I don't want to take anything away from Melbourne, who were unbelievably good on Saturday Arvo, but every call, like the Sharks couldn't get a call. Like Melbourne drops the ball and a play the ball coming off their 20 and challenges it. And even, I think it was King, like he knew he dropped it. And the commentators are like, oh, they're not going to win this one. And then the bunker says, oh, the Shark player moves his foot in front of where the ball, like that's never ruck interference. And there was another one where there was a drop ball that went to the bunker that the bunker talked himself into somehow error by the Sharks that wasn't there. And I'm just like, it wouldn't have mattered and it wouldn't have even affected the cover. But do you have to make all these games as lopsided as possible by just screwing the underdog? And it happened again in Knights Cowboys. The Knights, thank goodness for the challenge rule, because the Knights got 3 out of 3 challenges. Why did the Knights have to challenge a call 3 times? Because they got 3 straight dud calls and none of them were that close. Like, I think the Knights challenged a call 3 different occasions that within one replay was clearly overturned. And there was another blatant knock on by the Cowboys that the ref, Todd Smith, missed. And it was only that the touchy tipped him off. I think it was Robson trying to score a try and a metre short and just completely lost the ball. And Smith was going to let him go. And it's just like every call, you're not helping these sides at all. And I'm not asking for unfair help. I'm not saying it's a handicap, give the little guys up, better calls. But I'm just saying in the first 3 matches, the rub of the green, I guess that's the advantage you get for winning more games and playing at home. I don't know if it's just me, but it was kind of annoyed me that anytime there was a 50-50 call or even a wrong call, it was always in favour of the home side.
Mate, you're going to have to take that tinfoil hat right off before we get into week 2 of the finals. No, I'm only joking, mate. Overall, a great round of footy. We win a best bet. We win your Winnie's Kitchen and we win my Clarkey's Collect. So overall, a profitable weekend, right? And we look forward.
It depends, doesn't it? Like, if you're someone out there, and I know there's people that put big amounts of money on the best bets, and I always hang my hat on the best bets, and it kills me, and I'm never going to be happy to be 1 and 2. And I haven't been happy all year with the best bet results, right? And you see you're down like 15 units, depending on if you include mixed matchups as well. Mixed matchups, best bets is down 14 or 15 units. The same game multis is up 26 units. So if you're someone that just likes playing same gamers or whatever, as opposed to singles, you might love me and someone else might hate me. So I won't tell people how good or bad the season's being. Everyone can judge for themselves based on how they're following. Some people might not follow Clarkey's Collect. They might say, what does Clarkey know? And other people might be like, hey, if this guy's putting his money where his mouth is, I back him in. And they'd be very happy. And they'd be riding this plus 14 unit wave with yourself as well, mate.
Mate, if anyone knows me, they know I put my money right where my mouth is when it comes to my betting on the footy. So hopefully people have been back in Clarkey's Collect. And you did say in there quickly that there's some people that might hate you this year. Mate, fake news. I've never met a man that doesn't love you. And with that, we will close the show, legends. We will see you next Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. for our finals week 2 preview. We'll be back to break down both the games and hopefully give you some bets that end up cashing. Over to you, Winnie, for the final last word.
If you don't think anyone hates me, I'll show you my DMs after this, mate. But as I say, I got the full gambit of emotions this weekend. And I'm glad it ends on a high. I really didn't think I'd come into the show with a smile on my face, but it's really not easy to win and to win a best bet and then to cap it off with a $12 same gamer that goes down to the wire. That was in a bit of danger with my under tries leg. To win it by half a try, you know how many we've lost by half a try this year. Best bets or same gamers, we'll enjoy it. We'll take it. So well done to everyone who did jump on that with me, because I want to say 250, unless it was 350. 250 copies on Dabble. So that's a good crew of people that ended the weekend the right way. Hope everyone has a fantastic week. It's sad to say there's only 2 games next weekend, but we'll do our best to find some joy in those in 48 hours. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you.